Happy Rom-Com Month, everybody. We're doing 28 Days of Love, and today is day 14. It's Valentine's Day. It's so exciting. I am your host, Melissa Forziat. I'm a keynote speaker. When I speak, my topic is something I call Take the Doughnut. It's another way to say Carpe Diem, and it comes from this strange thing that happened to me in college. I left an actual donut on a table, but it became an object lesson for me and what it looks like to leave opportunities behind. So I don't want to do that anymore. I want to take the donut. Here's why I'm saying this. Sometimes I'll issue myself a take the donut challenge. If there's something that I want to do or go after, I'll make it official. I'll make some videos about it. This time I'm inviting anybody who wants to join. So here we are for 28 Days of Love. It's day 14, Valentine's Day, and we're here to watch Love, Rosie. And I'm going to talk about 10 things I love about the movie Love, Rosie, but I am not doing this alone. I have not one but two very special guests with me today, who are Lindsay Grossman and Madison Jones, who run The Love List, which is an annual collection of the best unproduced, romance-centered TV pilots and screenplays. So they're an expert on this. Welcome, Lindsay and Madison.
Thank you for having us. This is the most exciting thing we will be doing today, and that's saying something because the Love List actually comes out today on Valentine's Day. So the timing actually couldn't be more perfect.
It's true. And also, we love talking about any romance movie, but especially Love, Rosie, because we're obsessed with this movie. So we can't wait. We're so excited.
I think one might say this is all of our favorite, possibly all of our favorite rom-coms. Maybe. I don't know if you're going to go that far with the statement, but I definitely will.
It's definitely on the list. Like
Yeah,
it's
okay.
high on the list. Yeah, for sure.
Okay. So before we get into our lists, what's your journey with this movie? Do you remember like when you first saw it? What's your experience been watching it?
I think the first time I spent a lot of time in my youth and still to this day on Tumblr. So all of my prized media finds usually come from Tumblr. So I do think I first came across this movie on Tumblr in the form of GIFs. And I thought, what is this movie? I probably tracked it down on YouTube by searching Love Rosie Part 3, because if you search Part 1, you're never going to find it. And I think that I watched it in parts the first time on YouTube in a terrible format. And then I think eventually it made its way to the streamers and I got to watch it all the way through. I've seen this movie, I think, at least 10 times, maybe more. It's the perfect comfort movie. I often watch it on planes. It's the best. Lindsay, what about you?
Oh gosh, I I don't know. I'm such a movie watcher that like and romance in particular, because it is such an obsession of mine and rom-coms, like I watch a lot. So trying to remember when I first saw this is like very difficult. Um, I just know I've seen it a million times. Like it's one of those movies that I've gone back to over and over. And actually, Madison and I talk about this a lot because at least I would say specifically with rom-coms, I think the biggest thing I look for personally is I'm like, could I rewatch that movie 100 times? And if the answer is yes, I'm like, what a fantastic film. Like, I just think you should be able to rewatch it 100 times and still get that giddy, amazing feeling. And not every movie has that. So, yeah.
So good. I don't know if I've ever talked about this film with a single human in my life. So I am just delighted to speak with you two today. And in the process of that, maybe find some other fans of Love, Rosie along the way. For those who are discovering this film because of Rom-Com Month, I just hope you've been in for a treat with it. Like what a lucky day. This is my favorite. I think when I was little, I would have said The Cutting Edge was my favorite. I watched that movie like pound for pound more than any movie in my whole life. But the Love, Rosie as an adult just sort of hit the right spot for me and has continued to do so. So, how are we going to talk about this? You might ask. We're going to do a top 10 list. I'm going to cover, basically all the even numbers of things that I love about Love, Rosie. Lindsay and Madison are going to do all of the odd numbers, and sometimes they'll have overlap. Sometimes they'll do an A and B situation for this, because we just want to say all the things we love about this movie. So I'm actually going to start off by just really quickly sharing some of the details. Love, Rosie was, it came out in 2014. It was directed by Christian Ditter. It was written by Juliet Tohidi and Cecilia Ahern, who I believe wrote the book. This is an adaptation, basically. And then it stars Lily Collins as Rosie Dunn, Sam Claflin as Alex Stewart. Those are the main two, of course, but we've also got Christian Cook, Jamie Winstone, Suki Waterhouse, Tamsin Egerton, Jamie Beamish. At this point, Sam and Suki have done a number of things together as well. So it's nice to see when relationships like that continue in the real world beyond one project. So I'll share number 10 here from my list. And this one is a more general thing. Like we can bring in things that are very specific details or things that are broader themes. For me, this one's a little broader. The mastery of the almost kissed / barely kissed moment. And it happens so many times in this movie. These two actors, like, it's unbelievable. Lily and Sam just have this amazing ability to be like millimeters away from each other and have it work and be so compelling every time. It's like, are they doing this to me again? How? It always works for me.
I immediately, when you said that, my mind went to the scene when I'm going to keep referring to Rosie as a Lily. I know it in my brain. So apologies in advance if I use both names, because for me, Rosie has a lot of Lily Collins. I haven't read the book, so this is to me the original text. But when Rosie goes to Boston for the first time and they have that beautiful, one of those quintessential early 20s nights where you just go from place to place. You don't know what you're doing. You're having a great time. And they're in some sort of Boston green that was actually shot in the UK, but totally looks like a Boston green. And that almost kiss there. It's so perfect. And the tension is so high. And then, it's just all about to come crashing down, because that's what's really paired well with the almost kiss in this movie too.
I also think, just from like a romance perspective, because again, so Madison and I, just for a little background too, like when we met, we started a romance book club during the pandemic, which is still going. It's still a monthly book club, but it's like in book form, in film form, in TV form. We talk about romance so much. So I feel like one thing that is missing a lot from the conversation with film is they don't really understand how to deal with the sort of like sexual component or physical component of a relationship in movie form. And I think what they miss a lot of the time is like, what we're looking for as romance people is tension. That's really what we're after. It's not necessarily that there needs to be some explicit like scene. It's the movies that I feel like you watch over and over have the best tension. And that almost kiss, I think, is like a perfect example of that.
Yeah, how these two don't know what's going on, I don't know. I mean, it's unbelievable to me that they just keep having these near miss moments. But yeah, for me, that's number 10. Looks like
Nope.
Lindsay is frozen here, so hopefully we can. There we go, sorting that out.
Yeah,
Uh,
she's back.
so what do you both have for number 9? And if it's different, then we'll make sure we get each of you here.
Should we? I feel like a great transition sort of from the almost kiss is maybe to their first kiss, which comes right at the very beginning, which I think is such a great device in romance. But I think for me, one of the best things that works about this film is the opening. Specific, not so much when Lily's at the wedding and we intro and we're like, what's going on? Why is she at a wedding? Who is she talking to? But the next scene after the real sort of kickoff to the film, when she and Alex are celebrating her birthday and she gets really, really drunk and they share their first kiss, but we learn the following scene, she no longer remembers. And I think that's such a great trope in romance. And it gives the audience romance right off the bat, which I do think you want. You never want to make audiences wait too much for the actual romance, so they don't get frustrated, but you want to keep that tension alive. And I think this is the perfect trope that keeps everything alive, but also just introduces the also we'll get to this later, my other favorite thing, but it's just such a delicious scene. Also, the needle drop, the Beyonce needle drop in that party, going from a wedding where the tension is weird all of a sudden to the greatest night of your life, incredible. It's just the perfect way to kick off a scene and for the movie and the audience to know what's going on.
Hmm.
I think, I mean, I'll just say because it's a little bit different. Mine's definitely more general, but like this is a movie about pining. Um, and there's so many like delicious moments of like, I think what I love about pining is like the hurtful moments are so good because you know it's gonna like end up so well at the end. But just like the almost getting together and the miscommunication, it's like all tied up in that. But I love a pining movie. And I think this movie does that tenfold.
I have to agree with both of your points. I mean, first of all, the kiss like is both instant gratification and also a signal that every time it's going to be like can we just like they spend like a minute just trying to connect, even though they're going to kiss, like, and then after that they spend a minute trying to connect and don't kiss again. It's like, um just, I don't know, the spatial awareness there, unreal. But yeah, and then this thing that you have to be patient for this one. I mean, I think maybe this movie misinformed me for situations in my real life. Um, like pining doesn't always end in this result, but it's just to have something be like such a long-term thing and to have that patience as an audience. I think in TV shows, the love stories that work really well for me are ones where they had a slow burn over seasons and then the writers know well enough that they need to pay it off and have the opportunity to do that. This movie somehow feels a little bit like it's captured that energy.
Yes, 100%. I think my favorite romance thinking about it are usually in TV. And I think that's why this movie ends up really high on my list of favorite romantic comedy movies, because it does give that similar TV energy. You have that pining, you have that tension early on because you know there is an interest in from both parties because of that kiss, and then they don't know what to do with it.
Mm.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's also like a piece of it that is we can all relate to unrequited love. And I think even though we both know as an audience that there's interest on both sides, I think there is a lot of feeling throughout the movie of, is this unrequited love? So I think like we all feel that so viscerally. And I think that's why we're rooting so hard for it to work out because we're just like, we know what that feels like. Like, just figure it out. You
Like you
both like
don't
each
have to
other.
feel that way.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, especially for Alex in that following scene, he remembers the night before. He's excited to talk about it now that Rosie has done puking her guts up. And she goes, let's forget about it, not realizing that they've even kissed. And so that's hurtful for him. He's like, oh, she was just caught up in the moment. She doesn't feel that way about me. But then a couple scenes later, Alex is going to the dance with Suki Waterhouse. Suki Waterhouse is Suki Waterhouse. That is who she is. I think she's a delight in this movie. And then Rosie, who clearly has had feelings for Alex because she did kiss him at her birthday, is like, wait, I thought we were going together. I know we're friends, but I also feel something like, oh God, I've made a huge mistake. And it's just like off to the races.
yeah, and then proceed to do that again for the rest of the film.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Well, this is gonna be a big pivot, all right? And I'm not even sure how I'm going to title this on the top of the screen. I think there's gonna be some bleeping here, in writing. Number 8 is the Fuck You song by Lily Allen, which I had
Mm.
never heard before this movie and haven't heard in anything else since. But it is so exactly the right tone, not only for like the broader context of other songs in this film, but also for the moment. Um, it is especially important for the exact moment that the needle drops, and to pair that with the visual of Rosie and Ruby like sort of crashing the hotel room and storming in on Greg and the throwing of the like it just it's a longer montage, but it starts with it's so powerful at the start, and it just is that moment of the movie where I'm like really drawn in again, even though I was already there. It like it's like, oh yeah, this part. Okay, here we go. Um, so yeah, I have to bring up that particular song here. And I don't know. I somehow I've missed if this has been popularized elsewhere.
I don't think this was the first time I had heard it, but it was the first time I'd heard the song in a really long time. I have a weird memory of this song being paired with puppets. I don't know in what form of media that was. Maybe it's the original music video, or maybe it's a Glee episode. Couldn't tell you, but I think that's the first time I experienced that song. But it's a rare one. I think it's much more popular in the UK, as are, I feel like, a lot of my favorite things from this movie. Um, but I hadn't heard it in a really long time, but it works so well in this scene. It's so satisfying. It's so satisfying because that's what we're all thinking when it comes to Greg. And now look, we know that Rosie and Alex are endgame when we get into this movie. That's the contract we have with the creators of this movie, that this is the couple that's going to end up together. We don't know what's going to happen, but they will end up together. So it's not like we're rooting for Greg, but we're rooting for Rosie. And how often, when we've been scorned, do we wish we could have this sort of epic confrontation? And this is that. And just the soundtrack makes it so perfect. It's such a great song for this moment. It's triumphant, and you're able to push away. They got married. They were raising their daughter together. And just for it to all come crashing down, but you still have that, like, a little bit of a smile on your face. And I think that's what that song brings.
I will say, I mean, I can't speak for Madison on this, but Madison's a little bit younger than me, so I feel like maybe this is just me being a little older. I was very obsessed with Skins, the UK teen show.
Was
In
this
I
song
don't
in
know.
Skins?
So I'm not sure if this specific song was in there. I know there was another Lily Allen song, and that's how I discovered Lily Allen at the time. And so I remember just listening to that whole, like, her whole backlog of stuff. And of course, I thought I was like so cool because like she curses in her songs, and I just was like, oh my God, I'm so edgy, you know? But yeah, no, that song is such a banger. And that song, I think, if you look it up, was written as like a reaction to George Bush during the like Iraq years, which is just such an interesting. I mean, it feels like that was a long time ago, obviously.
I wonder how she feels about it being used in this context then. My goodness, what a hard left turn that took.
I mean, but there's something about Lily Allen, and I would put like Kate Nash in that same box. They're both these like British singers who just write these really epic, like I don't want to say like takedown songs, but they're just like they're telling you off, and like they're bangers. They're so good. So yeah, I love that song, and I definitely had heard it before this movie. But no, the soundtrack as a whole, I think, in this film is fantastic, but I think that particular moment is great.
Well, they captured a fun energy with it because I think Madison, you were saying, like it needs to be like the takedown song because Greg is so unlikable and we just are done with him. But it has to be excited and triumphant because thank goodness Greg is out of the way. Like that clears one of our characters to be available for the other one. So, like it needs to be like promising and hopeful and excited and angry. So this song somehow gets all of those things in one shot. But that's 8 for me. Let's go to 7 for you two.
Let's see. Lindsay, do you want to kick it
Go
off?
first, sure. Okay, so I know we have this in common, so I'll just say I think the cast is incredible in this movie. I do not believe this movie would work the way it does without Sam Claflin and Lily Collins. I think they're so likable and their chemistry is so good, that you're rooting for them from the beginning. I also think they spend a lot of time on screen with other people. And so I think if that chemistry had not been really established at the get-go, you just wouldn't know what this movie really was. So yeah, I think they're both incredible. I'm very glad they've gone on to have the careers they've had. I would watch them in anything. I think they're great. Um, Lily Collins, I also always wonder when I watch this movie, I'm like, so she's putting on the British accent, but then like part of me is like, wait, did she grow up in England to some degree? Like, because I feel like she does pull it off pretty well.
I thought she always had a British accent, and now I'm really questioning everything.
Well, see, I think she's one of those people who like rode that line. Like, I think she is like American, but I think she did maybe grow up in England at some point.
Well, her
So,
dad is British, right?
yes,
Her dad is
yes,
British.
yes.
Phil
So it'd probably
Collins.
be like if she, I bet she was a kid who had a British accent until she spent a lot of time in America, and then it kind of went away, but it can come back really
Sure.
easily.
See, that's
Uh,
what you really want. You want to be raised in between so you can get both.
exactly. The cast is so good in this movie. Lily and Sam just keep it so grounded. I think with the wrong cast, this movie would have been so absurd. And it could have been something that was a mocked rom-com because those do exist. I think we should not mock any rom-coms, but they do exist. And I think because they ground it so well, you're on that journey right from the beginning. And it's no matter where this movie turns, it still makes sense. I keep thinking, and just the cast in general, I keep thinking about when Sally and Alex are together, and there's the art guy, Herb, and she is pregnant with his child. Ridiculous premise, but you're with Sam slash Alex the whole time, and you're like, oh my God, this is devastating. He really loved her, but he also had complicated feelings for Sally, clearly. Um, but it works. And then even when Rosie's on the phone with Sally, when they've since broken up and Sally's water breaks, again, ridiculous scene. And you find out all the machinations of what just went down from Rosie's POV. Super ridiculous. But you're on that emotional roller coaster with Rosie, but you're also laughing, which is great.
Those two, I get, Lindsay, you said it, I'll watch anything they're in. And it's all good. Like there's a lot of gems out there, even if they're well known or not well known. Little side note here. Pretty soon I'm going to be starting a Daisy Jones and the Six deep dive podcast. And you best believe that Sam Claflin and Timothy Oliphant were reasoning for me to get into this show to begin with. But I just want to make the note that his last name in that movie is Dunn.
Oh my God.
Or in that
That's
show, yeah.
amazing.
Um,
I also read Daisy Jones, watched the show, I have never made that connection. That's amazing.
I also did not track that at all.
That's awesome. And it's spelled the same way, I think,
it's the
right?
same way. So it's just, this is the parallel universe we all wanted. It could be Daisy, it could be Rosie. Both are amazing choices. Um, and choose your own adventure. But there's a universe also in this universe. They live
That's
happily ever after.
amazing.
Yeah.
I'm now asking myself the question, do we think Lily Collins tried out for Daisy Jones? Because I know they extensively looked for all the cast members of that. And I wonder if Lily Collins ever did a self-tape.
Oh my gosh, I wonder. That would have been interesting to see. It's hard to picture it, but it's also hard to picture Riley Keough in that role until you see it.
Yeah.
So it's like maybe. But yeah, I have to agree with your collective number seven on that. And I'm going to sort of take off of that. And for my number six, um, Alex and Rosie's quiet devastation in that final airport scene is so palpable. Everything they have done to this point has been palpable, but something about that last, like, this is it. We really missed the boat. Like, it's not coming around again. Um, it's just like, I can feel it through the screen. I'm feeling it as an audience member. I'm feeling it for them. It reads all over their faces, but they're trying to, there's all these people around there are no more words to say. He's already married. This feels like a permanent thing. Um, I love the fact that we get Bethany clocking this in a very like empathetic way. We don't see her looking at this jealous, ready to get her man. She's like, oh God. Like, I can't be the thing that makes this look happen because she's the thing standing in the way. And so I guess the looks from all of those three, but especially Alex and Rosie just being like dazed and stunned, and this is how it's all turned out, and they now understand the story we've been watching the whole time. Um, I I think you probably in a script as an actor, you see something like that written, and then you have to do it. And I think they nailed it.
It's such a devastating moment, especially when you pair it with the fact that, and now I'm forgetting Rosie's daughter's name, Katie,
Mhm.
and Toby. Is that her Alex? They've just gotten together in the scene before. They put aside their moment of, oh my God, no, what's going on? And also, I mean, they were both 12 at this point, 12, 13. So they were not super drunk on tequila slammer. So they do remember their first kiss. I think pairing that devastation with that high moment of the two best friends getting together, there is one moment of tension, but then it all works out. That I think that just really makes it equally devastating.
I mean, I also think that's such an interesting moment because I think in another movie that was not a rom-com, that would be a permanent ending, right? Like, and I think the reason that you do feel it the way you do is because that's probably in real life more of what happens than not, right? Like, you can have great chemistry with someone and you can have this history and whatever. And like sometimes it just doesn't work out for whatever reason. And so I think that feels really like grounded and real. And when that happens as an audience, you're kind of like, wait, are they going to come back from this? Like, I think this is a permanent ending. Um, so I think that's why that works, is because it's such a grounded, relatable moment for everybody.
And, to keep going with what Madison was saying as well, the fact that we've seen what we saw with Katie and Toby on the roof or at the wedding in general, and to see like how much Alex goes to bat for them figuring it out. It's like he's the one that just got married. This should be a really happy day for him. And instead, he's like, this is my mistake. Like, do not make this mistake. Like, I am living proof that you should not do what you're about to do, walking away from each other and ignoring this moment. Um, and he says it without really saying it all. And it's communicated in sort of looks of confusion and then looks of clarity. And, but I think we need all of that going into like to make this airport scene the most effective. Um, so my goodness, the execution just amazing. But okay, so that was number six. What do you have for number five?
Number five. I mean, I feel like, and I think it's time for me to get on my miscommunication soapbox. I think we've reached this point of the podcast. And I think it balances nicely with the moment we just talked about. One of the best things about this movie is the miscommunication between Rosie and Alex. And it doesn't feel forced. It doesn't feel like it's two middle schoolers just not talking to one another. Each moment that they don't get together, each moment that there's a misunderstanding is so grounded in reality. And it happens. I will not take general miscommunication slander across the board in romance. It's one of my favorite tropes in romance, and I think there's a lot of hate towards it. And I think this is one of those movies that does it especially well. So if you think you hate miscommunication, watch Love, Rosie. They just do it so well, every moment. And there are different justifications throughout. We talked about in the opening scene, Rosie doesn't remember it. She was really drunk. And the way that the miscommunication happens when they're in the British equivalent of high school, secondary school, it makes sense for there, but then they also never address it. So when they are adults and can have real conversations, they still have that tension and that worry from when they were children. It's so good. It's so good. I love it.
Well, just to go off of that, I do have a different thing to say, but I will say just off of that, that miscommunication is such a big part of actual dating and relationships that like I don't really understand people disliking that as a trope because I'm like, that is so real. Like all you got to do is date to understand that like people sometimes can't communicate how they actually feel. And
When
there's
I'm
like
on
a real
TikTok, by the way, and I get a video where it's someone bashing the miscommunication trope, I will
yeah.
go into settings and mark, I'm not interested in this.
Madison's like hard no.
This is
Hard
wrong.
no.
Your take is wrong. You can have an
No,
opinion,
I
but you're wrong.
miscommunication, I think, is kind of an essential piece of like romantic plots in general. So I don't really understand people who say that. But I think for mine, and this is maybe semi-connected, at least in terms of tropes, is I just love that this movie is like a best friends to lovers story, which I think in the romance community, I feel like enemies to lovers gets so much love. Although I don't even think enemies to lovers is actual enemies to lovers most of the time. I think
It's
it is
rivals to lovers,
it's rivals to lovers,
which is more
um,
elite, quite
which is
frankly.
more elite. You wouldn't actually want to get with your enemy. Let's be real.
No,
Like you wouldn't
no.
actually want that. Um, but I think there's something about best friends to lovers that is just really like satisfying because there is so much love there in such a like platonic way to begin with. And if they could just sort out their shit, like it would all be so amazing. Because really, I think, in terms of romance, that's also like what you're looking for in a partner is like a best friend, right? And they already have that. So I don't know. I'm here for best friends to lovers. I'm really here for it.
And you know how deep their friendship goes just with the opening of the movie. You see, like they have been best friends. They have never let anything get in the way of their friendship forever. And it's set up so well. And what's great about going off of your point, Lindsay, what's so great about this movie is they have miscommunications throughout their friendship, throughout their lives, but never really there are very few moments where their friendship is over. I think they do a really good job maintaining their friendship. And even if they're in a fight, they show up for one another. Alex comes all the way to England when Rosie's father dies, which is, I think, one of the more heartbreaking moments of the movie and just is so unexpected, but it's so real and beautiful. And I'm so glad that they have that in the movie. Um, and also when Alex finds out Rosie had a baby and she didn't tell him, he's there for her so quickly and never there's no anger there. He's just like, I'm here to show up. Like I'm hurt that you didn't think you could tell me this, but I'm gonna be here for you, which is really beautiful to see.
Yeah, these two have an amazing capacity to like put the fight on a shelf. And because underneath that is all love. The fight is because of love. The love is because of it's all because they love each other in some sort of way. So the fact that these terrible moments that happen for either of them are actually an opportunity for them to reach back out and reconnect, somehow it's like there's this bittersweet element that always exists in their lives until they get together. So it's just so nice. And I want to take pull from something Madison was just saying, sort of into my number four, because this is featured in one of the scenes you just mentioned. This movie has some really interesting lighting choices that are kind of like artistic and put a glow around the film, literally and figuratively, that makes it just its own thing. So there's this like red hazy like sort of angry glow on Rosie when she's found out she's pregnant, and Alex is going to the Hazel with Bethany's parents, and she's right. And then later in that same bedroom, we get this whispery conversation in the pink glow of the bedroom because of those curtains when, Alex has found out that she's pregnant, and he runs straight to her, hops on a plane, and they have this beautiful conversation where it's all whispery because the baby's sleeping, and he asks if he can be the godfather. And even like the park scene in Boston, uh they're like, again, like this close, almost kissing, and a ray of light splits them apart. um it's just the lighting, and like it feels like they really had to work to get the look they were going for, but I'm glad they took whatever time they did to set it up the way they did, because it just it adds to the feeling. It makes the feeling bigger of watching this movie.
I'm so glad you brought up the lighting. This was one of my top five that I had went, which got a lot bigger than top five. And I do think it's going to end up losing from our list, but I'm so glad you brought it up. This movie looks so good. It looks like a movie. We really made fun of Harry Styles for a very long time for saying this is a movie that feels like a movie. Love, Rosie is a movie that feels like a movie. And it was a movie that came out in 2014, and it was a rom-com. And there's a bunch of these rom-coms. I think the Daniel Radcliffe, Zoe Kazan rom-com is another one, where it was released in theaters, but no one ever saw it in theaters. It was sort of forgotten, but they feel like real sweeping movies. The lighting is incredible. There's a real craft to it. Lindsay knows this, but one of my really big issues with the movie Wicked, which was a very good movie, the lighting was terrible. I don't know what they shot it on. It looked so ugly. I'm like, we're in Oz. Why is this so washed out? And I think, I have not done this, but I think if you were to watch Love, Rosie next to Wicked, you'd have so many questions as to what's going on with the lighting with these two movies. It's so beautifully shot. It's just a beautiful film. I wish they would re-release it in theaters for me to go watch. Lindsay and I love doing this when they re-release romantic comedies that either we haven't seen in theaters for a really long time or we never got to see in theaters, and they'll do them at various theaters around Los Angeles, and it's amazing. I need them to do this for Love, Rosie, because I don't think I've ever seen it in theaters, and I think it would just hit that much more because of it's so beautiful.
Yeah, it's so beautifully shot. And I also think that's you bringing up the lighting. I think that is one of those things that if you're not paying attention, you wouldn't even know that's happening. But I think the reason that this movie is so rewatchable is because I think it works on all of those different levels. Like I think the writing is fantastic, the cast is fantastic, but it feels like a movie. Like it feels like one of those movies that you like want to jump inside it and live in it. And I think part of that is like the way it's lit for sure.
Mm. Well, okay, lighting, number three. Or number four, I should say. What is your number three?
Lindsay,
Do you want me to go first?
Lindsay, you can
Sure.
go first.
I can go first. Okay. Okay. I love that this is a movie set over the course of several years. Because I think, we were sort of talking about this earlier with television, but I think Madison and I came up on the television side of things. So I think we really love a slow burn. Like that's our shit. Um, so there's something about time existing in a movie that really feels satisfying in a love story because that sort of final resolution of them getting together, it feels so earned. And as an audience, it's so much more satisfying. And like I said, I also just love seeing the changes of them starting at 18 and growing to I don't know, how old are they supposed to be at the end? Like 30,
30 something.
35?
The time in this movie, don't think about it too much, because when you think about it too much, it unravels a little bit. But I think they're supposed to be in their early 30s, I think.
Okay, early 30s. But yeah, I mean, I think you grow so much from 18 to 30 or early 30s. Like that is such a huge span of years. So I think seeing them not just maintain their friendship relationship over those years, but also grow is really interesting. And I think that's also one of the things that makes it work.
Yeah, so many rom-com. I mean, look, I know that there are people who in their own lives have experienced quick interest in people, but I'm not one of those people. So for me to see something I understand reflected on screen is to see something like this, where it's like, oh no, we've been doing the same activity for years now, and oh, you're there, it's one of those things for me, and movies don't often give you the time. They just it's why TV often has a better format for this for me. But movies are just have to tell you the whole story in an hour and a half or under 2 hours for rom-coms usually, and that's not enough time very often for me to fully feel invested. So this movie does, the fact that there is that passage of time, it does earn it for me.
Yeah, I will say they do the passage of time so masterfully in this movie. Don't think about it too much, but you can really feel with the makeup and costume design how much time has passed between Rosie and Alex at 18, Rosie and Alex at 25, Rosie and Alex in their 30s.
Are you just talking about Sam? Are you talking about Sam Claflin's hair?
Yes, I am talking about Sam Claflin's hair.
Because that is the thing. It's so funny because I did not have time to rewatch this before we talked about it, but I viscerally remember Sam Claflin's hair. Viscerally.
It works really well. And you can track, I think Lindsay and I both, we came of age during this time period that Rosie and Alex are coming of age. And you can track the hair choices in Sam Claflin so specifically. You're like, oh yes, this is when Justin Bieber was on the scene and everyone was cutting their hair like this. And oh yes, this is when we stopped doing shaggy hair and we were doing the really tight to the side hair.
Oh, so good. Okay. Well, okay. Love that one from Lindsay. Madison, what did you have for number three?
Number three is Rosie's friendship with Ruby. I love a rom-com, but I really love a rom-com where they make all of our two main characters specifically feel like real people with things happening outside of the will they, won't they relationship. And I love sort of Ruby coming into the friendship when Rosie really needs a friend, and how they stay friends and how much Ruby is there for Rosie. I mean, she comes to Boston. Even though she does not have the same relationship with Alex that Rosie does. And I think that's really important in this movie, is that Rosie and Alex's friendship is very different from Rosie and Ruby's friendship. They happened at two different times. It wasn't the three of them all together. It's two very separate ones. And so Ruby's able to offer that perspective to Rosie. And it's just really beautiful. I love it. She's there for Rosie when they go to confront Greg. She's there to help Rosie open her own hotel, which, by the way, is the funniest rom-com career ever. I love paying attention to rom-com careers, and this one is truly one of the funnier ones. It's great. I love their friendship so much.
I also enjoy that they gave Ruby a line that was something like, sometimes I think I look at my own life and I think it's a mess, but then I look at yours. Thank goodness I have you as a friend. And it makes you be like, Ooh, what's going on for Ruby? Because I feel like she probably has this whole full life um, outside of her friendship with Rosie. And so just like a little hint like that. I enjoy when that kind of thing gets inserted into a script because it's like, wait, no, this is my story and you just happen to be here.
I would love the spin-off movie following Ruby around. I think it would be
Well,
very different from Love Rosie, but I would love it all the same.
if this was a more traditional, because obviously it was a book, but if this was a more traditional romance book, there would be a book for Ruby that would just exist. They would have done it.
Hmm.
Maybe we need to start a campaign. I don't know. But no, I will say that Madison and I talk a lot about. So one of the big things we talk about with rom-coms in general is that if the only conflict of the movie is like, oh, they can't be together for X, Y, or Z, that's not a very interesting story. And it's also not how we relate to characters. I think like they both have to have their own things going on in their own separate arcs for us to care. And I think for both of us, one of the things we talk about a lot is, and I think this is just true as like a early 30 something woman, it's like my female friendships have been so important in my life. So any romance story that like doesn't acknowledge female friendship in some way, it just doesn't feel like a real person. Like you're like, she has no friends. She has no one. Doesn't make sense. So yeah, I mean, I think that's such a huge part of this movie. And I also think her being like Rosie being best friends with Alex and them having that male female best friendship and then her getting to have the female female best friendship, it just is such a great contrast because I also think one of the fallacies of romantic relationships is that your partner is supposed to be everything to you. And I don't think that's realistic. I think different people play different roles in your life. And I think we all need that sort of female friendship element. So
So good. Okay, I love what you two brought in for number three. Number two, that moment when Alex steps into the frame in the hotel when Rosie's back is turned. Almost not even the whole scene, just the moment. Like it's like finally, like, like, and even her back being turned. It's like it's them both seeing Ruby, where it's like, oh, something's happening, and she knows to turn around. Like, I don't know, just the potential that fills that moment and the relief for the audience, even though the characters don't get to feel relieved just yet. But just yeah, just this like this impending potential of a moment, just seeing him walk into frame. That's number two for me. I love it.
It really echoes the entire movie where the audience is always one step ahead of our characters because we're seeing everything. And I think that moment just sort of is the summary of the entire movie. We, the audience, have been one step ahead, but we're about to all be on the same page. And it's so satisfying to watch that. I love it.
I think also in those moments, it's like, and we've all had those moments in real life where like someone is behind us or watching us and we can feel it, even if we can't see it. And I think that it's such a great visual moment because I think you feel it viscerally. But I love the ending. I mean, again, I think it's such an earned moment.
By a lot. I mean, they earned it halfway through, I think. And then the rest was the torture in the best possible way. But that's number two. What do you have for number one? What's our favorite things about this movie?
I think my favorite thing about this movie is how funny it is. There are some really dark moments in this movie that we've brought up when Rosie loses her dad, when Alex is going through everything with Sally and he's really confused and that's why Rosie comes and they have that night. But then he really leans into wanting to be a father and then finding out it's not his kid. That's a really dark moment. But all throughout, it's just so funny. I come from a school of thought where in a rom-com, if you're saying it's a rom-com, it better have calm. It better be funny. I better be laughing. I better be laughing on the 10th time I watch it, as well as the 15th time I watch it. In addition to the first time I watch it, I need to be laughing every single time. And this movie really delivers, especially with, I always think it's so funny that I say this is one of my most watched movies, one that I really enjoy, because I hate a pregnancy trope, and that's what this movie is, especially for the first bit of this movie. And then it obviously falls away, and Rosie is raising Katie, but you definitely don't get that as much. And I think the humor is really what carries us through. I think pregnancy trope romance stories can be a little self-serious. And this is really funny. The moment when Rosie's giving birth, the needle drop there, that's hilarious. I've never seen that happen. Normally, when you're giving birth in movies, it's a really serious scene. This, I'm cracking up, and they don't spend too much time with it. The way Rosie does get pregnant is I think one of my favorite scenes in a movie, period. It's so ridiculous when she goes to the hospital. The doctor is so hilarious. And it's one of those perfect situations of Rosie is a real grounded character. And this situation is so weird. And everyone around her is normal, but it's a little heightened. It's so perfect. I love it so much. I love the humor. It's great. Can't get enough of it.
I mean, yeah, I agree that the comedy aspect, especially I would say in film and television, they love to call anything, any romance a rom-com. And it drives us crazy because we'll watch something being like, oh, this is going to be a rom-com. And then it's absolutely not. So I completely agree with that. But I would say my number one is more that I think I just really appreciate thematically that I think this is like a love story that is about you kind of finding yourself. Because I think that's something that's always relatable in a romantic plot is like we all, I think when we're 18, we have an idea of how our lives are going to turn out or how we want to mold our life to be. And obviously, from like that next decade, it's like, oh, just because you have plans doesn't mean it's going to go that way. But I think there's something really satisfying and beautiful about the fact that they do eventually find their way back to each other. And I think that's like a really nice message that it's sort of like, even if something doesn't seem like it's working out in the moment, it could work out in the future. You just don't know. Like you can't predict. So I love that.
Yeah, that idea that like something only is gonna work if it happens right now is really thwarted by this movie. Like sometimes it just needs to breathe a little. Sometimes it's just about the timing of it and not so much about it happening today. Um, so yeah, I think that's well observed. And, with the comedy, like actually this rom-com month list does have a mix. Like there are definitely some films that have a more dramatic feel to them. And I have to like be really specific about that when I'm talking about it. Cause I think, I don't know what the word is for rom-com drama or more drama than comedy. But
Romantic dramedy.
yeah, it's something like that, right? Where there's definitely a mix on this list, but Love Rosie is one of the ones that feels just light and good, and is why you can keep coming back to it. So, yeah, that's our number one.
Yeah,
We did it.
We did it. I think the book is a lot more serious than the movie. I think I've not read the book. I don't think I ever will because to me the movie is the movie, and I'm rarely someone who says I won't read the book. I like the movie, but this is one of those instances. But I feel like what I've read about the book online, I think it's a lot more self-serious.
Well,
Yeah, I can imagine.
well, and I was going to say there also is just sort of a tradition of British romantic comedies that I think this kind of falls really neatly into. Like I think you look at Notting Hill or Love Actually or any of those like Richard Curtisy type movies, and I think this really folds into that tradition very well. And I would say all of those movies have good dramatic moments. It's not like dramatic moments are not part of rom-coms, but I think what they miss is that romantic comedies as a whole should be funny. We should laugh at things. And if we're not, then like maybe don't call it a rom-com.
Yeah. Ah, this just made me love this movie even more. So that's 10 things, at least 10 things we love about Love, Rosie. And this is a chance for everybody who's watching this to jump into the comments and to share things that you love about this film. Maybe you agree with some of the points made. Maybe you got some of your own. Whatever it is you want to say, we want to hear about Love, Rosie. We all want to talk about this movie with people. So this is the chance to do that. And before we close out here, I just wanted to give you both an opportunity. You started to mention it at the top, but anything that you have coming up, or maybe even today, that you share with everybody?
Lindsay and I's busiest month is February because we put out the annual love list on Valentine's Day. We love a love brand. And today the list is officially out of our favorite screenplays and pilots that have a main romantic story. But we welcome all genres. There are very different stories on this list. We're all really excited about them. There were such great pilots this year, which we were really excited about. Last year, it was definitely more feature focused because I think that's something people always think, oh, a rom-com is a feature. And it is. But it's also, as we learned this past year with Nobody Wants This, it's also a really good way for television. So we're really excited about the list this year. And you can check out everything about us on our website and Instagram and check out what projects made the list this year at both of those places. We have a monthly newsletter where we talk about all things love and romance in media, books, film, and television. Lindsay, did I miss anything?
I don't think so. I think that's sort of, I mean, we really decided last year that our whole brand is just, we're the romance people. So we run this romance book club. We do, yeah, we're hoping this year to maybe do some more events around Los Angeles that are related to the love list. And really, I think our whole idea behind this is that romance is the biggest genre in publishing. It is what keeps the lights on. And in film and television, even though it is wildly popular, the powers that be don't always respond to that and don't necessarily fund those projects or bring those projects, especially I would say to movie theaters, which we are really big proponents of. We would love to see rom-coms back on the big screen or romantic dramas back on the big screen. Um, so yeah, I think our whole idea here is like we want to uplift these scripts and hopefully get them the attention they deserve so that people with the power to make them can make them so that we can watch them and enjoy them. Because again, romance is our whole brand. So
Oh my goodness. Well, what a good brand to have. I mean, if this month has been any indication, I just, what a wonderful thing. And for those who have been following Rom-Com Month and want to know what's next on the list, day 15, we're going to watch Benny and June from 1993. I have to tell you, this is one of the films that I put on the list where I had a vague memory of it. And I thought, I feel like this is the right type of movie for this to be on my list from what I remember. But I was a little nervous. I was like, does it hold up? And I've watched it again and I'm here to say it's magic. Like it's you would not be able to get a film like this made today with the log line that it has. So Johnny Depp, Mary Stuart Masterson, Aidan Quinn, really unusual rom-com but beautiful. And I'll be joined for that one by Anjl Rodee from BrushCapades. Got to have a painter for this film. Absolutely important. You may remember her from 500 Days of Summer coverage and Sleepless in Seattle coverage. So we're going to talk to Anjl again about Benny in June tomorrow. And in the meantime, everybody, happy rom-com month. Get love, get donuts. Bye.